Welcome to a new episode of Opening Bid. I'm Yahoo Finance Executive Editor Brian Sozzi. Like I say, this is the podcast that will make you a smarter investor and a better leader. I'm really excited to talk to our next guest because they have one of the most active ticker pages on Yahoo Finance, I would say over the past 3 months, maybe even 6 months. I have to go back and check my data. That is Rigetti Computing CEO Subodh Kulkarni. Good to see you. You're a bit of a rock star right now on the Yahoo Finance platform. I mean, holy cow. I mean, stock was up 48% yesterday.
Now, we are certainly excited to see the increasing interest in quantum computing and specifically our company. It's an exciting time period for quantum computing. It's coming along very fast, the technology. We have made great strides. The industry has made great strides. So we are excited to be part of.
I was trying to think of I haven't seen moves like this in a while. I was thinking about maybe I saw it in cannabis stocks a couple of years ago, but as a leader, before we get into your business, what do you tell the team after a day? Well, one, with your stock price up 48%, but the day before it might be down. I mean, the volatility it's huge.
Believe me or not, I try to tell the team not to focus too much on stock and try to ignore as much as possible the ticker and how it's moving and stay focused on technology. We are a technology development company. It's critical that we stay focused on technology development and not get carried away with the stock move and the trading volume.
Do you get nervous though? Holy cow, it's just moving too fast.
As I said, we just try to stay focused on technology and get our job done. I know it's easy to get carried away with ticker symbol and the trading volumes, but the best thing is not to get caught up in it.
So you mentioned you were at the a Needham conference yesterday. Given the moves in the stock, what are you being asked right now by investors?
Well, the main question on everyone's mind right now certainly is because of some of the comments that were made by people like Jensen Huang and Mark Zuckerberg after that how close are we from quantum computing become a practical reality. The word that they used was useful, and it's a subjective word, it's a little vague word, so it's hard to say when is something useful for whom and so on. So but those are the questions that are front and center on investors' mind. Is everyone understands quantum computing is going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. It's a question of when, not if. And that's the critical discussion going on. Is it now, as some companies claim, that they are finding value with their quantum computing solutions with customers now? Or is it 15 to 30 years from now, as Jensen Huang was saying? That's on the pessimistic side. There are still some super pessimists out there who continue to say quantum computing is never going to happen. That's really far out there. We happen to be somewhere in the middle. We think quantum computing is definitely going to happen. We can talk technology numbers more precisely. We can talk about qubit counts and fidelity, which is a very important metric in quantum computing, gate speeds and those kinds of things. We have a roadmap. We can see how we can make progress with those numbers. Exactly how those numbers will materialize themselves into business opportunities with data centers, it's not clear. We can see most likely we can deliver what we call quantum advantage, which is basically superiority with quantum computing for practical applications, somewhere in the 3 to 5 year time period. So when people ask us, when do you think it's really going to happen? We say, please define what that means. Yeah. But so long as it means when is commercial interest going to really start making a material difference to all of us, our timeline is roughly 3 to 5 years from now.
So part of the role of a CEO of any public company is telling the company story, but also managing investor expectations. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're in that room in that Needham conference, do you have to tamp things down a little bit? Hold on a second, guys. We have to, we have a plan. We have to drive this plan, and then X, Y, Z will happen.
Absolutely. I mean, particularly because of the hype that is going on in the quantum computing space, and some erroneous statements are being made, including by people in the industry. We have to tamp down some expectations.
Like what's erroneous? Like what are they?
When some people are saying we can demonstrate great value with quantum computing now, sales are going to explode now, and I believe they are wrong. I don't think, right now most of us, when we talk about sales, these are essentially government contracts. As important as they are, that's not viable long-term business opportunities with commercial customers. Mm-hmm. So I do have to tamp down investor expectations when they say how rapidly are sales going to grow in 2025 versus 2024 and in 2026 versus 25. I try to tamp that down.
So that's like an example of hype. That's hype getting into, I guess, expectations.
Yeah. So I have to tell them that it's still not the time to talk about sales and sales growth because we are still very much in the technology development mode. We have to get the technology perfected before we can start seeing real material difference in sales.
When do you? I mean, you make. I read your annual report. You make. You not high. Like you've not made money. Like when does that switch turn?
And that definitely ties with the sales milestones. So as I said, we are clearly in R&D mode. We are clearly in the technology development mode. So we are in the investment mode right now. We do have some sales, but that's mostly government contract kind of opportunities. Assuming the timeline I described earlier holds, and we start seeing material sales opportunities 3 to 5 years from now, we certainly expect the company to start becoming cash flow break-even around that time period. And beyond that, profitability will come along. But it is a long process. It's not something that I can assure investors that it's going to be next year or next quarter or anything like that.
You mentioned in the in your reports that you may have to raise capital, but first quarter of 2026. I mean, given the stock price, do you use the stock price to raise capital now, like given how far it's come?
We are fortunately in a good position today. At the end of last year, we had close to $225 million cash and no debt. And our burn rate is roughly $60 million a year. Okay. So we have sufficient cash for at least 3 or 4 years. And then it depends on how the government contract opportunities materialize. Assuming US government and some of our allied countries that we deal with continue to invest in quantum computing and we get to some of those opportunities, we hope we can extend our existing cash to the point where we don't need to raise cash anymore to
so you wouldn't want to use this run up in the stock as a stock offering to raise money, just to build up your arsenal?
We'll always look at what we could potentially do, and so we never want to say we won't do something because things could change. But as of today, we don't need to raise more money for the foreseeable future.
That's good. So take us through what you actually do. Like, what is the chip that you make? Tell us a little bit about the technology.
So fundamentally, quantum computing is a very different way of doing computing compared to classical computing, where you have zeros and ones. We have multiple states, and they coexist at the same time. We call them qubits. We entangle the qubits. So when we have n qubits, our computational power goes 2 raised to n. Also, the energy consumption goes down. So fundamentally, it's a superior way to do computing, both from a performance standpoint as well as energy consumption standpoint. To make that happen, we build this chip, quantum chips, which have qubits. And that's really where a lot of the value in the company is. So we design our chips. We build our chips in Fremont, California. Then the whole stack, we call ourselves a full stack company, and we have an open modular architecture. So once we build a chip, we put it in what we call a dilution refrigeration to cool the chip down. Then we have control systems to control the stack. Then we have things like error correction, firmware, and of course the application layers. So right now we do just about everything. We outsource some parts of our stack. Dilution refrigeration we buy from existing players like Blue Force or Mabel and a few others. Control systems, we do look at options like quantum machines, Zurich Instruments, and so on. In error correction, we are partnered very closely with a company in UK called Riverlane in Cambridge, UK. So we look at options to integrate clever, innovative solutions from outside, but we are responsible for the full stack. But the core value of the company is actually the design of the chip and the fabrication of the chip. That's what we really put our effort. Right now, the focus is really on fidelity of the chip. We can clearly do computation, it clearly works, but our error rates are too high. And at the current high error rates, it really is not practical to compete against CPUs or GPUs today. We are inferior in performance compared to them.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there's a lot of, just given the rise in the stock, there's a lot of new investors that have become familiar with their company. And I feel as though they are looping you in with an Nvidia and AMD. How are you different versus those companies, those bigger chip makers?
Well, fundamentally, we are dealing with what we call QPU, quantum processing unit. The companies you mentioned, Nvidia obviously is very important in the GPU world. In the CPU world, you have companies like Intel and AMD. AMD also is getting into GPU. So we are in the QPU world, completely different technology compared to CPU world and GPU world. We are dealing with qubits. We are designing the chips. We are making the chips. Certainly, we are in the R&D stage right now. Our focus is to get the chip perfected, essentially, get the stack perfected. And right now, we are not there. We are clearly in the technology development mode. So today, if you ask me to do a ROI analysis with our QPU versus a GPU or a CPU, our solution would look inferior to you from a performance or cost standpoint. But we see the potential. Assuming we continue to increase our fidelity, assuming we continue to increase our qubit count and improve our gate speed and some other metrics, in 3 to 5 years, we believe we will be able to demonstrate superiority with QPU compared to CPU or GPU. And that's really the goal right now, is to get us to that point where we can say, here's quantum advantage. The potential opportunities after that are mind-boggling. We can tackle problems that cannot be tackled with classical systems.
Like what? Like what's a problem that this chip can solve?
I mean, things like weather forecasting, things like drug discovery, where you have protein folding, unfolding. There are many problems where you have tens of thousands of variables that are interacting simultaneously. And those are intrinsically very difficult problems to tackle with CPU or GPU technologies. Those are the kinds of problems we can take on. Things that are probabilistic in nature, where you are asking the questions of what are the chances of an economic recession happening? What are the chances of...
What are the chances? I have to ask.
Don't we wish I'll be a new answer to that one. So those are the tricky problems where you have tens of thousands of variables that are all interacting with each other simultaneously. They're very difficult to program and solve with the conventional classical computing architecture. Those are the kinds of problems we believe quantum computing will be able to help us solve.
All right, hang with us. We're going to go off for a quick break. We'll be right back on Opening Bid. All right, welcome back to Opening Bid. Having a really interesting conversation here with one of the hottest tickers, hottest companies on the Yahoo Finance platform. That is Rigetti Computing and their CEO, Subodh Kulkarni. I'm really enjoying this discussion. You mentioned you do work or working with governments. Like, what is the government reaching out to you and saying, hey, we want to work with you on this? Like, what do they need from you right now?
So governments of many countries understand the importance of quantum computing. There's potential that once we perfect quantum computing technology, you can relatively easily break AES 128 or even 256 or 512-bit encryption with quantum computing, which cannot be done with classical computing. That means quantum computing could be used for very rogue applications. People could hack into existing computing systems, and that could be a disaster.
It's terrifying.
Exactly. So many governments understand the importance of quantum computing. So you obviously want to be ready for quantum computing to happen. You want to encrypt your information, assuming quantum computers are around to break standard AES 256 or 512-bit encryption. And so many governments have strategic interest in quantum computing. They understand that this is a technology of the future, and you definitely don't want to be a laggard in this technology. We certainly want to be a leader as a country. So the government of US certainly has been a pioneer in this area. The original National Quantum Initiative Act was passed in 2018 that funded our DOE labs, and many of the companies like ourselves got funded through those DOE labs. That's where we get the contracts from so far. There is a bill right now that the US government is debating. It's called NQI reauthorization bill that we expect to pass soon. And that's, assuming it passes in the current form, it's a $2.7 billion investment over 5 years. Most of that money will go to DOE labs and some of the government institutions. Eventually, some of it will come to companies like us to help advance the technology. So then what we do is we work with individual government DOE labs like the Fermi Lab near Chicago, or the Oak Ridge National Lab, Brookhaven National Lab, and so on. And we work with specific projects that they think are suitable for us to take on. So sometimes it can be they design the chip and we build a chip for them. Sometimes we build an entire chip or the substack of the quantum computer and give it to them. Sometimes it can be in the error correction area. Sometimes it can be in the control system area. So depending on what they think we should be doing, they define the contract and we work closely with them.
It's been an interesting 4 years, just staying on the government topic, in the land of chips. You've had the Biden administration put a lot of money to work with the CHIPS Act, trying to build fabs in the US. Intel, of course, leading that charge. But they've also cracked down on what could be shared, Nvidia right in the crosshairs of this, with China. Is there anything that the Trump administration could put forth that would help your company or things you're concerned about?
Well, right now we are certainly still in the technology development mode, so everyone's trying to understand how to safeguard the technology. Clearly, the interest is to make sure that whatever we are developing doesn't get abused by other rogue companies or countries. So safeguards are being put in place. It is deemed as a critical technology. So we will be eventually export controlled technology. So all that work is going on. But we are still very much trying to understand where to draw the lines. You don't want to put the restrictions so severe that you thwart the development of technology. At the same time, you don't want to keep it so open that it becomes easily accessible for rogue companies or countries. So that work is still going on. It's not clear where exactly the safeguards have to be drawn. But as we perfect the technology over the next 2-3 years, I'm pretty sure there will be some regulations that will be put in place to safeguard the technology.
Do you think the technology has gotten out of hand, but it's moving so fast that regulators can't get their hands around it?
There's always a risk of that we in the technology development world tend to move quite fast, and regulations sometimes have a tough time keeping up. However, in this case, from what I have seen, many people who are quite knowledgeable about quantum computing have already started writing documents about where the line should be drawn. So I don't believe that's the case here, as it is in some other areas like the Gen AI software areas where it's harder to put the safeguards. Here, maybe because we are dealing with hardware technology, it's relatively easy to see where the safeguards may have to be drawn.
Why are Jensen Huang and Mark Zuckerberg wrong on the timeline for quantum? Now, I get you say, yeah, they're going to be wrong because you're in this space. When Jensen says potentially 15 to 30 years, Zuckerberg maybe a shorter timeline, but they really, their comments hold a lot of weight and they impact your stocks. Like, why are they wrong?
I mean, it's hard to say or define what is useful, as I mentioned earlier. So rather than get caught up in why are they right or wrong, what I can say is based on where we are, I know where we will be in 3 to 5 years. So for instance, right now, we are at 84 qubit, we are at 99.5% fidelity, we are at 50 nanosecond gate speed. I can tell you that in 3 years, or certainly 5 years, will be more than 1,000 qubits, will be better than 99.7 or 99.8% fidelity. Gate speeds will be less than 40 nanoseconds. That is a lot more under my control and our team's control. So we are pretty confident of our roadmap and our ability to execute the roadmap. Will it be useful at that time? That's where the debate comes in. Now, someone like Jensen Huang and Mark Zuckerberg, of course, they have their rights to say what they believe in, and they think that it will be 15 to 30 or 10 years from now. And there's no way I can prove them right or wrong sitting here. I believe that assuming we execute our roadmap, there are a number of organizations that are going to start finding quantum computing quite valuable. So, and there are many big companies who have run reports on this, McKinsey, BCG, IDC, and they generally tend to agree with what I'm saying. They believe that the business will start evolving. The most conservative estimates we have seen is that the business for quantum computing will be about a couple $2 billion a year, 5 years from now. On the aggressive side, that they are talking about somewhere in the $10 billion a year neighborhood. Now, maybe to some people, a couple $2 billion a year may not be a meaningful business because they are so big as companies right now, and maybe that's where they are coming from. But for small companies like us, a couple $1 billion a year is a very sizable material opportunity. So perspectives can change depending on where you are coming from. So it may be just a question of what do they mean by being useful versus what do we mean by being useful.
You're getting lumped in, your company, with other quantum stocks. That's how these stories are written, quantum stocks. How are you different, let's say, versus a D-Wave?
So within the quantum world, there are many different ways of doing quantum computing. We belong to a camp that is called gate-based computing, which is what classical computing does. So in classical computing, we have gates created by the CMOS transistors. It's something similar we do in the quantum world with qubit gates. So companies like D-Wave or some other companies, they do what's called annealing. It's a very different approach. It's not a gate-based approach. And I understand you talk to them. So it's a very different way of using quantum effects to solve a problem. We are much more in the general purpose computing with gate-based computing. Within the gate-based computing world, there are different what we call modalities of quantum computing. We belong to the camp that's called superconducting quantum computing, which is where we are using superconductors to create quantum states, and that's what we are using to solve the problems. But there are other modalities. There's trapped ion modality, where companies like IonQ and Quantinuum are pioneering. There's photonics, where companies like PsiQuantum and a few others are doing some work. Spin quantum computing, which is where Intel and some other companies are playing a role. So, and there are a few other modalities. There's pros and cons of different modalities. We belong to the superconducting camp where along with us you have IBM, you have Google, Amazon, but also Fujitsu in Japan, Riken in Japan.
So does your chip compete with a Google Willow?
Effectively, we do compete with IBM and Google from a technology standpoint.
Interesting. So if I were having this conversation a year from now, what does your business look like?
Still, I believe we will still be a technology development company a year from now. We hope we will be at a higher qubit count, obviously. What we have disclosed is by the end of 2025, we want to be more than 100 qubits. We want to reduce our error rates by a factor of 2 from where we are. And we want to continue to improve the other metrics. Critical area where we are pioneering is we are getting into launching an approach with chiplets, very similar to what CMOS industry does. Right now, if you take any of your advanced devices and advanced nodes with CMOS, more likely than not, they are using chiplets, which is small chips. And the reason they do that is because it's a lot easier to control yields on small chips because of the unit surface area. The same holds true for quantum chips. So we believe the path to get to thousands and hundreds of thousands of qubit is through the chiplet side, not a single monolithic chip. As of today, all of us, whether it's us or IBM or Google or others, we are doing monolithic chips. We believe the right way to scale up a qubit count is through the chiplet approach. So a lot of our effort in 2025, besides improving fidelity, is to start including chiplets. So by the end of this year, we want to demonstrate chiplets work in quantum computing, and we can improve our fidelity and reduce the error rates by a factor of 2. That's where we will be a year from now. Assuming we succeed with that, then the roadmap will be continue to increase the qubit count and continue to improve the fidelity from there on.
In the final moments of the podcast, we always love to ask our guests like their hot takes. So my question to you is this: if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing in life?
I was in the semiconductor industry for more than 3 decades. Chances are if I wasn't doing this, I would still be in the semiconductor industry. And it's a close cousin of quantum. I mean, what I'm doing right now comes very close to what semiconductor industry does. That's one of the advantages of superconducting quantum computing, is we leverage the know-how from the semiconductor industry, garnered by people like myself. So I'm bringing semi-experience into the quantum world. So chances are if I was not doing quantum computing, I would be doing some part of the semiconductor stack anyway.
How do you blow off steam? You have a hobby? I mean, I'm trying to figure out, like, help some of these investors that are now really just enthralled with your company, help them get to know you a little bit.
Well, certainly it's a complicated area. I mean, quantum physics is not something that
No, it's not easy stuff.
Anyone can understand. Most of us remember the toughest class we took, whether it was undergraduate courses or graduate courses, was likely the quantum physics class, and for good reasons. I mean, it's mind-boggling that two things can do that contradict each other can be coexisting at the same time. And a tricky part is when you go try to probe it, it loses its state. So something you cannot measure or monitor is going around, and that's very intrinsically very hard for us to understand. As I said, I'll try to understand the science the best I can. Sometimes it gets too deep, even for me. I'm an engineer by training, and this gets into the heart of quantum physics. I have my own hobbies. I try to do them to try to keep my sanity intact. But sometimes in the quantum world, you do wonder whether you know what you're talking about.
I think you guys are doing some fascinating stuff. It's been fascinating watching these stocks. Look forward to staying in touch. Please, you're more than welcome to come back. Subodh Kulkarni, Rigetti Computing CEO. Just interesting story. And that's it for the latest episode of Opening Bid. Be sure to hit us with those thumbs up on all the major social media platforms. Really enjoying right now the comments y'all are putting on YouTube. I try to answer them all. I really appreciate the feedback. I'm learning a ton. So continue to hit us with those likes on YouTube, and of course, all those thumbs up and signs of appreciation on the podcast platforms. We appreciate it. And that's it for the latest episode of Opening Bid.